Hi, we're going to be working on the high neck, mock neck, bare shoulder sleeve. And this is the colorful prototype so that we can see every section. And we're going to be working on this particular sleeve here with a cutout. It's already done on this side, so you can see. So when it refers to the mesh, here's the mesh, the chest mesh, here's the plateau, here's the open part of the sleeve, and we're going to be going, once the sleeve is done, we'll be going around the entire thing. It looks too big now, but it won't be after. There is going to be a final trim around here, and this is how the sleeve is put together. And because this angles, it's best if we have a sleeve that angles too. It just makes it less bulky under the arms. You wouldn't want to angle it too much because then you wouldn't be able to raise your arm. But this angle will work for any of the vertical sleeves from my previous patterns. So this is how this looks. I'll use different colors on the other side, but the purple is where we crochet around. We start at the armpit and we single crochet around, but there's a chart for how many single crochets go around this entire armhole. This would be the armhole, and the purple you attach here and you single crochet around, and then we will chain and start the sleeve. There will be dogs in here too. Let me change my focus, and we're going to be starting right here on the blue at the armpit. Now, this is the other armhole. This light green is the collar. This is the arm. This is the armhole. This would be, the blue is the underarm. Here is the vents, and if you didn't mark this part, the center right here, you can just go straight up from the vent and go here, but this happens to be where we started. It's where we start and where we end, so here I know to put it in the arm, to attach my yarn in the armpit. So when it says underarm, it's the blue. When it says armhole, it's the pink. And then this is continued on from the mesh, where we continue around and attach the pieces, and this is a collar. My dogs are going to go nuts. I'm going to be using the same stitches as we used in the pattern, but I will be using a bigger hook to make things more easy to see. Now, I suggest you use I know that there's more complicated ways, but I suggest you use ways to, it's kind of an elementary way to fasten, but it keeps things nice and flat. And attach your yarn to the armpit. And then you're going, where it says go up towards the front first, up towards the front, we're going to be going up towards the mesh. And I'm left-handed, so this is going to have to be turned a little bit. So this is the collar, this is the mesh in the front, and so we're going to go up this way. And so you have to go up the front first, because this is what's going to determine, there is a chart that determines the amount of stitches, single crochet, let this focus, single crochet stitches that go all the way around. And the amount of stitches from here to here, the armhole part, and the underarm part, those are very specific, and please look at the chart. Now, there is a different number. You can use a different amount of armhole. Say you're big breasted, but the rest of your body is kind of small, like you have a D cup or so. Then, obviously use a smaller armhole. You can make this fit you, because that way it'll be big enough for your chest, but you won't have this big open arm. So anyhow, we're going to put 12 stitches from here to here. And I will give you some idea of where to put the stitches. But when you do this, attach it in a simple form and then pull through your loop. And we're going to just find our stitches here. And ooh, they're a little hard, so work with them a little bit. And we're just going to single crochet up around the armhole. And it's going to be a little funky, so you're going to need to count. So I've got 2. I need to put 12 here. So I'm gonna be putting 10 between here and here. So just kind of think through it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and just think through it of how many go from here to here. And single crochet, and if you can keep it nice and flat. Now this isn't going to look nice and flat, of course, because it's a very open weave with all the different colors, but plan ahead on your stitches so that you get them properly. And just make sure you count. This is the part that it matters. It matters that they're even, but this is a part that matters how many stitches are here, because this is where we're going to be attaching the armhole. And then when you get up to the mesh, it says to put in 2 stitches in the mesh, and let's look at this, and alternate. So see these mesh loops, you're going to put a stitch here, and then you're going to alternate 2 and 3. So and however you start out, just continue in that manner. So put 2 here, then 3 here, but however you end up. So I'm going to put them in the hole, in this whole side. Go through the space. Don't go into the stitches. It will make a difference. So I'm going to alternate 2 and 3. I'm going to put 2 in here. And then the next one, see this next loop, I'm going to put 3, 2, and do it in the whole space again. And we're just single crocheting in the spaces. And then I did 3, so this next one's going to have 2. And this is going to be a little crowded up here, but don't worry, it's going to look great. It's what keeps these loops nice and open, so it really shows off the mesh. And just look back and alternate 2 and 3 stitches. And then I'll show you what to do when we get up here. Well, let me pull this, and I will, don't worry, I know this isn't focusing, but I will get back in frame. Okay, so we're up to the top, and I alternated 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, and then I'm going to go up here and see how, now I know it looks like that there's, when you get up here, see how it's going to be harder on yours, but see how it looks like it's 3 loops? This is actually where it's attached to the body. This is not a loop. So when I say put 4 stitches in the loops, I just mean these 2 here. This is where it attaches, and it will actually be easier to see on yours than it probably is on mine. So you've got a marker here. We're not going to go into this part or go into this part here. We're going to skip right over here. I'm going to put 1 stitch in there and skip right over here. So look at your chart and see how many stitches for the armhole size that you picked. Now when we get up here, we're going to skip over this part here, and we're going to put 4 stitches in each of these 2 loops. So mine is like a small, so I'm going to need about 60 stitches. I'm not going to count them, but that means I'm going to need about 30 from here to here. And then as I go in the other half, again, this is the same on both sides. At the top, at the collar, you see the collar, you're going to put 4 stitches. This will just make a really pretty design. And then remember, don't go into here. You need to go skip down to here. And on mine it's easy to see, but on yours it's going to look, you're going to need to just start in the mesh stitch. And you're going to put one stitch here. Now going down the back, because the back doesn't have a mesh portion, it's all that really steep armhole that you made where you increased or decreased very quickly. You're going to need, this will be your center point, this will be your back, this will be your center. So from the armpit up to the first, up through this first 4 in this loop is the first half. So whatever you put in here, you're going to need to put down here. So mine has got 60, so I've got 30 up to this part. So and then I've got 4 here, and so I'm going to need to do 26 more down here to make them match. And so however many you put in the rows, in each row, it's about 2 in each row. Just make sure it's flat. Because you're working with the same colors, it's not going to have to be perfect, but you do need to make sure your stitch count is the same all the way around. And you're going to, and if you need to, put two stitches in to give you enough stitches. Whatever you got to do, it's just 60 stitches or 60 to 70 stitches depending on your armhole size, but make sure that they match up. Some things don't matter, but this stitch count on front and back do matter because of how we're building the sleeves, and you need to have the proper amount of stretch. So I will meet you down at the armpit where you started. Okay, now that you're down at the armpit, let me show you, and you've got the same amount of stitches on each side. Then just slip stitch into your beginning stitch. And then you're going to want to chain, if you're doing a plus size, a 1x, 2x, or 3x, you're going to chain 32 and turn. And your first 5 stitches will be a half double crochet. And if you're doing a small to a large, small, medium, or large, you're going to chain 33. So everybody's going to chain the same amount. So chain your 32 or 33, and I will meet you back. Okay, I chained, I didn't chain 33, or 32, but if you chained, if you're doing a plus size and you chain 32, we're going to look at this, and there's a little, we're talking about working in the bottom loops, and there's kind of a hidden little bottom loop, especially if you're working with acrylic yarn, that has tripped some people up. So if you're doing a plus size, you're going to do, the first 5 stitches are going to be a half double crochet. So you're just going to be going to the second bump, the second bottom bump, and do 5 half double crochets. If you're doing a small, medium, or large, you're going to do, you're going to start with all double crochets, and you're going to go to the 3rd bottom loop. So don't forget to count this in 1, 2, 3. You do need to have 30 work stitches. We will not be counting this turning chain. So I'm doing a smaller medium, so I'm not starting off with the half double crochets, I'm starting off with the double crochets. And I'm going to double crochet in every bottom loop all the way back to the armpit. So you need to have, when it says have 30 work stitches, we're not counting the skip chain as a stitch at this moment. It will tell you when to count the turning chain or the top of the chain or the skip chains. It'll tell you when to count those, but we won't. So if you're doing a plus size, again, these first 5 work stitches will be a half double crochet. The small, medium, and large, it'll all be a double crochet. Just make sure you have 30 work stitches, and I'll meet you right here. So you're going to work double crochet, 5 half double crochets if it's a plus size, or double crochets in every single bottom loop all the way back to the armpit. Okay, here we are back. Now what I did was I changed colors partway through so that you guys could see what I'm doing here at the armpit, because this is a tricky part. So make sure you count your stitches when you get back here. That way you'll know if you've got the right number. And when you get here, it's just, let's take a look at this. You see how this would be the bottom bump, but if you crochet into just that one, it's going to be a little loose. So do your last double crochet into, pick 2 loops. And now we're going to go towards the mesh, so we're going to go up the front first. This matters, so make sure that you're going up to the front towards a mesh. The back doesn't have mesh on it. So we're going to go up towards the front. Now here, it says to put a half double crochet in the same stitch where you attached your yarn. So right here is the attachment. I attached my yarn, went all the way around, and here's where I slip stitch. So I'm going to change from this was a double crochet. I'm going to change and do a half double crochet and see the same stitch. See how it's the same one work there? So we're basically just adding a stitch to this row, and we're going to add stitches as we go up, but we're going to add them at the armhole. So, and we're doing a half double crochet to tighten it up, and because we need this stitch shorter. And mine's going to look a little messy, but yours is going to look great. I mean, if you've gotten this far, it's going to be easy from here. Now, it says to slip stitch the next 3 stitches up. So we worked in the same stitch. Now, mine are different colors, but if I stayed with the purple, you'd see that it was the same stitch as where I attached the yarn and slip stitch. It's right here. And then we're going to we're going to slip stitch 3 stitches up. So we're kind of attaching this row. We're attaching this row. We're going to attach it right here with a slip stitch. Then we're going to work 2 up to go back down the other row. Back down the other row. So every 2 rows is going to move up 3 stitches on the armhole. So we're going to slip stitch 1, 2, 3. Now here's the tricky part. Turn it over and see your 3 slip stitches. Oops, I'm sorry. See your 3 slip stitches, 1, 2, 3. I want you to put another half double crochet in the 3rd stitch from the hook, which would be your, okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. These were our slip stitches. I want you to put a half double crochet in this stitch right here. So it had been the first slip stitch you did, but the 3rd one from your hook. And just do a half double crochet. Keep it all nice and tight when you turn, because this will get a little loose here. And so if that's a little loose, pull it out. And I have to do this a lot. It's not very many rows. You're only going up just about a dozen rows is all you're doing. They're really fast, but pull this a little tighter and redo the stitch if it's too loose. Mine were like almost every time. See, that looks better. And then we're going to, after that's a half double crochet, then the rest, then we're gonna just continue on and double crochet in every stitch all the way back down toward the wrist. So this is toward the wrist down here. Now this we're going to be finishing it, but this will be toward the wrist. And those of you that are doing the plus sizes, don't forget these last 5 stitches here need to be a half double crochet. So double crochet down, and remember, those of you, your last stitches. I will meet you at the bottom of this, at the wrist. Now we are not crocheting into the turning chain or the skip chain. We're not, this is our last stitch. In some patterns, the top of this chain 2 would be our last stitch. But unless I tell you differently, the top is where this is going to be our last stitch worked right here, if you can see that. So on some parts of the pattern, you notice you did, when you were adding stitches, you did work into the top of this chain 2. But we're just working right to here, so count back, and there should be, you'll be adding one every row, so this will end up being 30 double crochets, and then your half double crochet is 31, and then this next row will be 32 stitches. But as long as you do the right thing at the end, you won't need to count stitches. So I will meet you at the wrist. Okay, and just for quick recap, we're doing the ends of this, the end of this wrist, just like we did the bottom of our bodice, where we kept it straight across, but we are going to be using these chain 2s. So this is our last stitch. We won't be working into the turning chain. And the turning chain, again, is defined as where we chain 2 and we turn. And so that's why it's called the turning chain. But in this case, I would like you to chain 2, and then I would like you to double crochet in the same stitch as a turning chain, okay? So technically this is the same stitch as a turning chain. And I want you to double crochet. That keeps our stitch count even. And see, this makes every other row, just for recap, every other row, there's going to be a chain 2, a double crochet, or a half double crochet, and a chain 2. And so every other row, and so when I say when we do trim around it, we've been working into the chain 2s, and we'll be doing that again for the sleeve. So double crochet, oops, I'm all turned around, sorry. Oh, this is me. Okay, double crochet or half double crochet, do your 5 half double crochets as plus size. Double crochet, and I will meet you right here. Okay, again, we're at that part of the armhole, and we're working up the armhole from the armpit, underarm, up the armhole towards a mesh. And we're back here, and don't forget this stitch right here. This is where we turned. And don't forget your double crochet needs to go right there in this stitch. So don't lose that stitch, because otherwise it's going to look gappy. See how we're slowly adding and angling this sleeve? It'll fit really, really nicely. So now see how this is the stitch we worked in from before. We're going to half double crochet back into the same stitch from the previous row. We're going to half double crochet, that adds one for that row. Then we're going to slip stitch the next 3 stitches up. 1, 2, so we're going to slip stitch 1, and then we attach a row, see? 2 and 3. Make sure you keep this tight when you turn it. And then again, and if this is confusing for you, just kind of follow blindly, even though it seems weird. I do things differently, but they fit really nicely, and they end up being real sturdy too. So see how we have 3 slip stitches here. Let's see if I can get them to turn. 3 slip stitches here. So we're going to half double crochet in the 3rd one from the hook. 1, 2, 3, which was the first one we did as we turn to go down the other side of the row. And make sure this is tight, and half double crochet into that stitch. So we added another stitch. Then continue on, but double crochet in here. Don't forget this stitch. And if you added more than that, it'll be slightly more angled. It'll be great. But there's kind of no way to add more stitches. I tried, because it's a pretty steep slope from the armpit up to the neck. So half double crochet down, and I will meet you down at the end of this row toward the wrist. Okay, here we are toward the wrist. Let me see if I can show you. Oh boy, I just turned the wrong way. Okay, oh my goodness. Okay, remember here's the top, here's the neckline, here's the mesh, and we're working out from here, but since I'm left-handed, this is a little bit difficult for me. Okay, so we're at the end of the row, and again, this is our turning chain, our chain 2. This is our last stitch, and we work in that one, but we're not going to work in the top of the turning chain. This is our chain 2, this is a double crochet or a half double crochet, this is a chain 2. And these are turning chain. That's just the chain that you make when you turn your garment to start your next row. So we're not going to be working into this. We want this to go every other one like this. We're going to chain 2, we're going to turn, and then we're going to work into the same stitch as the chain 2. And so that way we keep it kind of flat across. This is just easier to work in for the pattern that we're doing. And then I will meet you back, we're working back towards the armhole, and I will meet you back here at the armhole. Here we are back at the armhole. Make sure I'm in frame here. Now this is from the previous row we worked. This is a work stitch. Do not forget this little stitch here. Don't forget to work into that one. Do it with a double crochet. Now we need to find the same stitch from the previous row that we worked in on the armhole, which is here, and it's easy to see on mine because it's a different color. See, we worked in that stitch. That's where our extra half double crochet goes. And then we're going to slip stitch 3 slip stitches up here. So 1, 2, 3. Now don't forget to follow instructions for how many rows this is supposed to be. Look on your chart on what armhole size you decided, and this will tell you how many rows. This is the first half of the underside of the sleeve. And turn this, tighten it up, and go into this stitch. Let's see if I can turn it again. Go into the 3rd slip stitch from the hook. 1, 2, 3, and half double crochet into that. So basically we begin and end the row at the armpit, or at the armhole, with a half double crochet. See, I'm beginning this row with a half double crochet, and I ended that other row, the last row, with a half double crochet. Now we're going to double crochet. Don't forget this stitch here. All right, double crochet back down, and I will meet you down at the wrist. Now, we are down toward the wrist. Actually, we'll be building more on this sleeve later, but now we're going to the cutout part of this sleeve. Here's the armhole, here's the collar. The cutout part of this sleeve is built up here. We're not going back to the armpit anymore for this half of the sleeve. We're not going all the way back, we're only going towards. So this cutout, let me see if I can show you on this one, on the green. See, it's built on the end of the sleeve. It's built towards the wrist. There's nothing built between, this is the bare shoulder part. So that's what we're going to do. Now again, do not work in, this is a turning chain from the previous row. Do not work in that one, just work in the last chain, the stitch worked. I'm not going to work in the top of the chain unless it tells you to. Now this part is going to be 4 rows for everybody, no matter what. But don't forget the plus sizes, the last 5 stitches here need to be a half double crochet. Those need to be shrunk down so that it can taper down the arm properly. All right, now here's where it says to count down from the armhole. See, the purple is the armhole. But we're supposed to count down from the armhole 10 stitches and place a marker. And here we go. So don't forget this one. And if you turn it over, you can see that it's a stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're going to place a marker. And I'm just putting a really big marker in here so everybody can see it. And then we're going to do our ends just how we've done this. We're gonna, the part towards the wrist, we're gonna do that the same as we've done all of them. We're gonna chain 2, we're gonna turn, and we're gonna crochet in the same stitch as a turning chain. Now we're going to crochet all the way up to, but not into, the marked stitch. So this is the stitch we're going to stop at. I will meet you there. Okay, here we are at the marker. I've got 1 stitch before that. Now we're going to do something similar as what we did in the armhole. In fact, it's exactly the same as what we did in the armhole. So we're going to go up to, but not into, the marked stitch. So I'm going to double crochet, and then I'm going to turn without chaining, and then I'm going to double crochet in the second stitch from the hook, 1, 2. And I'm going to double crochet into that so that we can make a really tapered, a steep taper is what we're doing. We're tapering it outward to make that big cutout. And then we're going to work down to the wrist, and I'll meet you there. Here I am towards the wrist, and this is only 4. So we already did 2 rows. We did them all together. You can always pause and crochet right along with me to make sure you're right. We're going to do like we always do, chain 2, and we're going to turn, and we're going to crochet into the same stitch as the chain. And remember, this is to give us a double crochet or a half double crochet, a chain 2, and make the end of every other row a chain 2, and that's on purpose. Then we go back towards our marker. Now I'm just going to continue on really quickly, and I'll show you what this looks like, but there's only 1 more row after this. So this is 4 rows. That's all it's supposed to be. It'll look really loose at the bare shoulder part, but we're going to be putting a trim around it to tighten it up. Now when we get back to here, I'll show you this. When we get to here, this is our last stitch. This is our last stitch. We're going to go up to, but not into, the last stitch. This is the last stitch from the previous row. So we're only going to go into this row. We're making it a really steep taper. So we're not doing the very last stitch right here. We're going into the next to the last stitch. And then we're going to turn. And we're not going to chain. And then we're going to go in the second stitch from the hook. We're going to begin crocheting. We're going to crochet into that and then back down to the wrist, or toward the wrist. It's not quite to the wrist yet. Okay, and so this makes a steep slope. This makes a steep slope, and this will be part of the cutout. This is going to be the top of the arm right here. This is going to be where we join as you go, but I'm going to get down to this bottom part here. Now mine is less stitches. It's the same stitches you'll be doing, but it's more open weave in the last 2 to make it briefer so that everybody can follow along. Now I'm at toward the wrist, so yours is going to be a lot longer through here. Don't worry that you did something wrong. This is going to be the same. You know, I'm 10 stitches from the armhole, the purple armhole. So this part's going to be the same. Now, as always, crochet into this last stitch, but not the turning chain. We want this to look like this. And then to turn it, you need to chain 1, and then we're going, when it says turn 90 degrees, we're going to turn this 90 degrees. We chained 1, and we're going to work along here so that we can begin and go back and make the mirror side of it. So you see where we're at. We're turning and we're going back along here to edge this. Now it says how many stitches to put in here, and mine says like 20. So it says how many stitches to put in here. So when you turn it, you're actually going to be, you chain 1, and you're actually going to be working into the last double crochet that you made, the post of the last double crochet, and just pick a nice spot. See, this is a real nice spot right here. And we're going to single crochet and put in the correct amount that it says along here. And pay attention to these amounts because they do matter so that we can all get to, our wrists aren't a whole lot bigger than, don't vary in size by much. So we need to have it taper down properly so that, you know, the bare shoulder part looks nice. And so we're going along here and put in the amount of, you have a chart that says the amount for whatever size sleeve you're doing. It says the amount of stitches that you should have from here to here. I will meet you right here. Now see, nothing unusual happened here. This is just where this was my beginning chain. Ooh, let's get this. This was a beginning chain from the armpit, the 32 or 33, and this is where we turned. And I just changed colors so that you guys could see better. Now here's our next corner that we're going to turn. Now right here's these two chains that we skipped, and you're going to crochet into one of them, one of the skip chains, and then you're going to, we need to indent this because this is an added row. So we need to start at this stitch right here. So you're going to work into this stitch, you're going to chain one, and then you're going to slip stitch into this first stitch here. So it's just going to be indented. There's really good pictures. Otherwise, if we started out here, we're going to be having to put this trim when we do the other side. So now we're working along our very beginning chain. Okay, so we need to begin that. This is the beginning chain from the armpit. That's why it's purple. And then remember, I went back and I changed colors so that everybody could see. Now we're going to be working along there, and I'll show you how that is, and then I'll change colors. Well, maybe I won't. You want to chain two, and then you want to go crochet into the next one. Now, if you're doing the plus sizes, then you're going to be doing half double crochets in the first 5, of course. And so you're working right along your beginning chain. See, this is your beginning chain, so you're going back and working back up to the armpit, and you're going to make a mirror half of this. So I'll meet you back at the armpit. We'll go over how to do that again. Okay, so I changed colors. Here's where we turned our corner. Here's where we indented. Here's where we indented, and there you're going to need to work 30 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just count your stitches, work that many stitches, and when you get to the armhole again, this is going to be a little crowded here, but that's okay because that'll just make it sturdier. Don't forget this last stitch here, and you went into 2. Remember our chain, our last stitch, so you've only got 1 to go into, or you can pick up another one. However, I'm kind of hard on my stuff, so I'm picking up an extra one to make it nice and sturdy there. Yours is going to be much less gappy in here. I'm just using a big, huge hook so everybody can see. Now we need to go do a half double crochet in this same stitch where we attached our chain. And it's going to be a little crowded in there, but that's okay. We want it there. Do a half double crochet. So remember, we do our 30, and then we're doing our additional half double crochet in the same stitch where we started. Then we're going to, I changed colors so you can see. Then we're going to do 3 slip stitches up the side toward the shoulder. We're going to turn it, and then we're going to count 3 stitches. We're going to half double crochet in the 3rd stitch from the hook. 1, 2, 3. Those were the 3 slip stitches we just did. So we're double backing and doing a half double crochet, and then we're going to half double crochet along this row, and I will meet you here. Okay, so just like before, we're not going to work in the top of this turning chain, which would be right here. We're just going to work in this last stitch worked. Okay, so this whole thing is going to be indented because we have an extra row here. So when we do the top part, the other half of this sleeve, we're going to be coming back along here and joining up these rows. So continue on the pattern, make an actual duplicate. Duplicate what you did over here, over here. Now I'm going to do a little shortcut, and we're going to go over to this side because this side is done in the correct colors. And I'll show you. Once you make the duplicate, I'll show you what you have. Alright, ooh, sorry about that. I'll show you what you have. Okay, so here's what we have. And I ended with a peach, started with a green and ended with a peach. Okay, here's what we have. And then, so this is my fourth row. Well, I haven't started my fourth row yet. Okay, let me get this in screen. Okay, this is the mirror image. And I haven't started my fourth row yet. And I'm doing a join as you go. You can just slip stitch along it if you want, or I'll just show you the join as you go real quick. So this is where I turn. Now this is your working side. The green is your joining side. You always do the stitch in your working side first. So I'm going to double crochet into, I'm going to finish this row and slip stitch to this row. I'm going to double crochet, and then I'm going to slip stitch here, and then I'm going to go back to my working side. We'll call it the peach for working. Do my double crochet and then slip stitch into this row. And that's how I'm going to join them. Take a shot at it. Just make sure you don't get your working side and your joining side mixed up. Your joining side is the side that you just finished, and this is the side you're still working on. So I know it's easy to see here, but it isn't always so easy to remember which side you're finishing your row on and then joining to. And I'm doing this kind of quickly, but there's I've done a lot of videos on how to do it, or just slip stitch. I mean, you've got to finish that row. Anyhow, you still have to do your fourth and final row. So it would work better if you do it this way, but you don't have to. If you just want to sew it up and then continue on, you can do that. I mean, I would just start this way, sew these two, I'd finish this row, sew these two shut, and then I would have my yarn to continue on from here. So whatever works best for you. Now when you get to the end here, do not forget you will be working into the turning chain just this one time. Well, if you want, you don't have to. And here's your final stitch right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and work in this turning chain and slip stitch to make it nice and flush here. And then I'm going to slip stitch into this very end stitch. Now here's another funky part. I'm going to turn. Now I already worked a 90-degree turn on this side, and just like I did on this side here. So this side has already been worked on. I'm going to go back and edge and put a trim on this side. So see, this side has a trim. I'm going to put a trim on this side. Pay attention to how many stitches. So I'm going to go along and I'm going to trim this with the exact amount of stitches that I put on this side. And then when I get around here, I'm not going to go back up over here. I'm going to slip stitch to this beginning stitch right here. Now take a look where this indent is. Remember this indent? I'm going to slip stitch to this stitch right here. So I'm going to put a trim right along here and slip stitch to this, so that way I have the total number of stitches around that you were shown to do. So that's the cutout portion of the arm, of the sleeve. And here's how it looks. Here's a cutout, here's a collar, and then we're going to be putting a trim around here, all around here. It's going to go around here at the very, very end, around here, with a cute little trim, so it won't be too gappy or anything. It'll be just perfect on your arm. Thanks, bye.